Hello and welcome to the Biotech 2050 podcast. Biotech 2050 is a think tank chronicling the disruptions changing the biotech industry over the next several decades. Check out our website at biotech2050.com. My name is Alok Tayi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vibe Bio. Vibe is an AI platform that helps pharma companies make strategic decisions. I'm really excited today to be recording this podcast interview live in San Francisco at JPM 2026. Today, I'm joined by Brian Hilberdink, the president of the U.S. business of Boehringer Ingelheim. We're going to be having a really interesting, wide-ranging conversation that spans the company, its foci across multiple therapeutic areas, how they think about growth in the future, as well as everyone's favorite two letters, AI. And I'm also told that he's going to give us a special entree to his background, including where he started his career. But with that, Brian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, maybe to kick it off, love to hear about your background and how you got to where you are today.
So, 30 years-ish.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, in the innovative pharmaceutical industry. Started in sales at Novo Nordisk in Canada. And I'll try not to go through the long bio, but basically spent 26 years at Novo Nordisk. Absolutely fantastic opportunity. Made 6 cross-border moves within that company. So I went from Canada to Denmark, USA, Canada, Denmark, back to Canada, and then back to the United States. Really great run. After 26 years, really wanted to get back into general management. I was heading up the commercial business at Novo Nordisk. And a really unique opportunity came up to head up a company in the US called Leo Pharma. Leo is also Danish, and it's actually the company that made insulin on behalf of Novo Nordisk going back to 1923. So I've always known about this common history and heritage, but the mission of Leo Pharma, being a privately held company, was turn the US into the primary growth engine, build up the medical dermatology company, because that's the focus of the company, and then the plan is an eventual IPO. So really terrific, kind of felt like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take that journey. Went to Leo, spent 3 absolutely fantastic years there, and just a company to keep an eye on as the IPO hopefully will happen one of these days, but the company's made great strides. But in line with it making great strides and having a great management team in place and helping to build up the portfolio, I kind of felt like, not that the job is completely done, but there was an opportunity to go to Boehringer Ingelheim. And in consultation with some great colleagues at Leo, made the decision that I would take the jump over to Boehringer. Really what it was, at this point in my life experience, to be able to come back to a company and lead at scale. Lead at scale and be able to do something, I'm going to maybe lose you on this one, but it's like if we do things right at Boehringer, we can change the world. Because this is a company that's committed to disease states like chronic kidney disease. It's a company that's going to get into the obesity place where I was at Novo Nordisk. It's a company making a difference in interstitial lung disease, getting back into oncology, competing in multiple therapy areas. And when I looked at that pipeline, the uniqueness of its independence, being a privately held company that's been around for 140 years, the mission, the mandate, I just thought that this, again, is the proverbial opportunity that I couldn't say no to. And here I am.
Yeah, amazing. Well, one of the things that struck me as really interesting is the fact that your background really comes through the commercial side of the organization and the industry. You obviously meet many leaders who come from perhaps the medical domain or the biological domain, which has merits in its own right. Would love to kind of just hear, what was that experience like having carried a bag, right? And what types of insights and perspectives does that offer you as you now lead an organization responsible for multiple functions beyond that?
So I often think about all of the work that goes into developing a molecule. And I often think about, the scientist and, the basic discovery. I think about the whole clinical development process. I think about all of the strategy, everything that happens, clinical development. We think about all the careful planning that goes into it. And it all comes down to an interaction between a sales rep and a healthcare professional. And for many healthcare professionals, the only person that they will see from a given company is that sales rep, is that customer facing. They might be fortunate enough to see an MSL or maybe a field reimbursement manager, but for the most part, it's the sales rep. Now that sales rep can either represent everything that came before them, the fantastic clinical development program and all the good messages, or they can completely blow it. So having that perspective, starting off realizing that this isn't door-to-door selling, encyclopedias. I'm trying to think of photocopier machines, whatever cliches you want to come up to. I'm selling something that if I'm not there, I'm not able to help this physician really make the right clinical decisions. And to me, I thought this is a really cool place to be because there's lots of things that we can do to make money. But when you can be in something where you're adding value, helping a provider to make better decisions to help their patients, that's incredibly rewarding. So having that foundation, understanding how important that interaction is, and therefore, how do we build the right messaging? What's the positioning of the product? How do we make drugs more accessible? It all started by gaining that perspective.
Yeah, wow, amazing. That said, given the series of kind of commercial roles and now leadership roles you had in pharma, I'm dying to know what begat your career and what was the first step?
Okay, super highly transferable background. My first job prior to being into pharmaceutical sales was managing a theme park.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so near Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
And it was the kind of job I had from high school and then into college days, and contemplating going to grad school at that point in time, and had the opportunity to move into a management position, and suddenly have hundreds of people, kids mostly, teenagers and college students reporting into me. What an absolutely fantastic experience to get all your bad management experience out of the way and help set me up for something in the future.
Yeah, well, it sounds like managing a theme park, you've got components of sales, you've got leadership and hiring, right? That sounds like of those experiences when managing that theme park, any one particular experience or skill set you developed there that you feel like has really continued and tied together your experience?
It was ingrained in my head from a very early age, working at that experience from the owners of the park, just how to prioritize the customer experience. And you might be having a bad day, or you might be in a situation where one of our attractions isn't ready to go that day, mechanical problem or whatever. But the person who prioritized that day to come to their park, the experience that they had on that given moment, they don't care that you're having a bad day. They don't care about the excuse of the mechanical failure or whatever. So what are you going to do to make sure that their experience is still fantastic? And I know that this is sounding very Disney-ish or whatever, but this really translates to, what experience do we provide providers? What experience do we provide our patients? There's lots of things that can go wrong. How do we make sure and minimize that as much as possible? How do we make sure that every patient who gets our product is getting access to it, that the quality is exactly what we say it is, that we're providing them with the information they need to be able to utilize it properly? How do we do that via their provider? I think that was just ingrained in me from the very start.
Yeah, amazing. One thing I wanted to truly drill in on before we kind of get into BI specifically is we're seeing also this shift in terms of commercial from this direct field force to OTC, DTC, especially with, say, Novo's partnership with Roe now, right? Curious if you have any commentary around kind of how does the principle and execution of a commercial organization evolve, you think, in the next, say, 10 to 20 years, given some of these initiatives?
As a starting point, going back to what I said before about all the process that we go through to develop drugs, if patients don't have access to the drugs, then again, what's the point in even developing them? I think trying to find new and innovative ways to make sure that patients do have access, like direct-to-consumer distribution channels, is absolutely going to be the future. Now, there's a caveat. This is primarily a phenomenon in a disease state like obesity. The challenge in obesity is that there's still a low level of overall coverage. If patients start getting broader coverage and it becomes more general benefit, like for example type 2 diabetes drugs, is there still going to be as much pull for that DTC platform? So I think these are things that we need to monitor, these are things that we need to follow, but I think it's very exciting. I also think that it's exciting that you do have the Roe and the Hims and Hers, not necessarily selling the compounded stuff,
For sure.
but is there a way of providing more wraparound service than just providing drug?
Yeah.
Understanding that something like obesity is multifactorial. Patients can certainly get benefit from pharmacological therapy, but they can also get benefit from just understanding how they can eat better and other behavioral modification tools.
Well, I think it comes back to your earlier comment around prioritizing the customer experience, right? It's clear that some digital and other types of components really can add value there. So
Exactly.
makes sense. Now, that said, you've spent time at some phenomenal institutions like Novo and Leo. Why BI, and what does the future look like for the organization?
Yeah, so again, I think BI is, first off, really uniquely positioned. It's an independent company, world's largest privately held pharmaceutical company. And it means that we're not standing in front of analysts on a quarterly basis explaining what we're doing. Well, there's nothing wrong with analysts until you have a profit warning, right? And then it can lead to a lot of knee-jerk reactions within an organization. I think the fact that this is a company that really has a long-term focus and focuses on health for generations is a really cool construct, because it means that a company like Boehringer is putting as much as 27.5% of revenues back into R&D. At our size and scale, I think that's almost unprecedented. As a result of this continuous investment in research and development, we have a phenomenal pipeline. So when I started looking at the pipeline and the possibilities at Boehringer, the opportunity to further the agenda in chronic kidney disease and the public awareness campaign that the company's doing, and I'd be happy to talk about that in more detail, launching in obesity, changing possibilities in interstitial lung disease with the first innovation after 36 failed phase 3 studies, finally breaking through in both IPF and PPF. I mean, I just thought, I'll tell you, when I first came to Boehringer, very first day, I was actually at a Leo national sales meeting. Mm-hmm. Didn't take any time off in between. That's not something I'd recommend to anyone, by the way, but flew to Newark, got in a car, went to Ridgefield. First time I was actually on campus in Ridgefield, went to the auditorium. We had the whole company online and in studio audience. The first 4 words that I said is, I love to launch. That's why I came to Boehringer. I love to launch. The fact that I already get the opportunity to launch 2 products with 2 approvals in 2025, 2 new indications already in 2026, all of the phase 3 data from our obesity program being released in 2026, and anticipated other launch in 2027. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's a commercial leader's kind of ideal circumstance,
Absolutely.
right? Get new things out the door and to new patients. One of the things I know we touched upon is when it comes to these sort of programs and the spaces you're going into, they're generally high unmet medical need, interesting areas with prospective competition on the horizon. Would love to kind of hear how you think about the strategic choice of which indications to go after, given the nooks and crannies, but then also, what are some of the competitive advantages and philosophies BI brings to the table to help protect and carve out those domains?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we always look at where do we have competency. So respiratory pulmonology has been a focus area for the company for many, many years. Mm-hmm. So when I made reference to the fact that there was 36 failed phase 3 studies in interstitial lung disease before nerandomilast, Jascade, was approved, I mean, that just speaks to understanding the disease state, understanding that there's an opportunity for a new target, a new modality to make a difference in that disease state. So that one's obvious. When you start talking about metabolic disease, we're currently there with type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, and heart failure. But then you start thinking about adjacencies. Obesity is a natural area to get into. When we start talking about obesity, we realize that we need to go beyond pounds on the scale, and we need to start thinking about overall metabolic health. If we're not considering the liver and liver health, we're not really going to be necessarily getting to the treatment goals of getting to that healthy metabolism. So I think it's constantly looking at adjacencies to areas that we're already in. Mm. Now, what's interesting again about Boehringer is we put that significant investment in research and development. It may fortuitously lead us into new disease states. Mm. Eye health is an example of an area that we're not currently in, but we do have some assets. And we believe that we have enough in that area that we could actually start a new business unit at some point in the future and try that out. We've also had situations in the past where we've developed innovative molecules like the Skyrizi molecule as an example, where the decision was made at the time, this isn't a core competency. Let's find a partner who does have a core competency in the case of psoriasis and then into other indications that came along with that brand in the case of AbbVie. So I think the company does a really nice job of focusing on let's have scientists be curious. Let's find new pathways. Let's find new targets. Let's find innovative modalities. Then let's make the determination, do we plug it into our commercial machine or do we hand it off to someone who we think can best represent the asset and help the patients that can benefit from it?
Yeah, well, I think that level of discipline, I think, is really unique in pharma. One of your peers at another company made this comment that the worst thing in the world is to have too much money in a pharmaceutical company, because then you don't have the structure and rigor, right, required to make decisions. Curious how that relates, if at all, to the ownership structure, the culture, the vibe within the organization.
So again, I think when I'm thinking about independence, I think about the fact that there is this long-range commitment. So anyone who works at Boehringer, they know that we're in it for the long term. That means that we can take the time to invest in things like disease shaping. You know, I've made reference a couple of times to chronic kidney disease. This is a disease that impacts over 35 million Americans, but the vast majority of them have no idea. Because way before your kidney function starts to decrease, as measured by EGFR, you're producing protein in the form of microalbuminuria. It's a simple, cheap test called a UACR test that can detect whether or not you have microalbuminuria. If you have microalbuminuria, you have endothelial dysfunction. This is a modifiable risk factor in line with hypertension and LDL cholesterol, but people don't know about it. We're committed to making a difference. We're committed to a public health campaign. It's called Detect the SOS. You're going to see it on TV. You're going to see it on billboards. But this is a type of thing that we can do because of our independence. If you're a publicly traded company and you have a bad quarter or two, you need to start cutting costs because you have expectations to deliver a certain level of profitability. You may not stay in it the same way for the long run. And I think that that's maybe a bit of a distinction. Super patient focused, long-term focus. This whole idea of health for generations is absolutely central to the culture at Boehringer.
Amazing. So, you know, with that, I'm really excited to hear a little bit about how you think about growth for the organization, the portfolio, acquisitions. What does that mean for Boehringer?
We need to keep launching. We need to have success with these launches. You know, I've made reference to Jazzcade nerandomilast, this innovation that we're bringing into interstitial lung disease. We have a product right now that is currently the market leader, OFEV. However, that's near the end of the life cycle. So the best way to maintain growth is to do this life cycle management, to make sure that, you know, before you have loss of exclusivity of one product, you're able to bring in other products that are also bringing potential for innovation in the category. So I think making sure that we get off to a strong start with these launches is absolutely core to that. From a growth standpoint, again, moving into disease states like obesity, where everyone says, how are you going to compete against Novo and Lilly? I think, how do we compete against clinical inertia? There are 100 million Americans that are living with the disease as obesity. And fortunately, more and more people are starting to accept that it is a metabolic disease state. It's a little bit like type 2 diabetes 25 years ago. We used to blame the patient for giving themselves type 2 diabetes. Now I think we're still way too harsh on people living with obesity. But yet there is still only single-digit percentage of patients that are getting an evidence-based pharmacological therapy for their obesity. And that's despite the fact that everywhere you go, everyone's talking about GLP-1s and everyone's talking about obesity.
Totally.
So when you talk about growth, it's also pick the right disease states. Don't be so caught up and worried about the competition. I've had multiple people tell me, but there's going to be other competitors coming in. You're not going to be the last. And, you know, there's other big pharma that are coming into the space. Great, because that's a rising tide situation. Then other people will say, but aren't you concerned about what's happening from a pricing standpoint? We saw that, you know, the MFN deals that Novo and Lilly cut, and it's actually a really positive thing because it means that patients that are on CMS plans, Medicare Part D and Medicaid, will have access to obesity drugs. That's a great thing. I'll trade out value per patient for volume in that disease state any day of the week, but I'm also going to trade it off by having some more rare disease type products where you could kind of say it is a little more of high value. What's really cool about Boehringer is that we are hedged across multiple therapy areas. We have ultra rare disease in the case of Hernexios, non-small cell lung cancer with a HER2 mutation. We have medium rare with Jascade being an interstitial lung disease. We have Jardiance right now, which of course is type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, and it's a primary care drug, similar with where Serval will fit in. And I kind of feel like by having this balance in the portfolio, it's a nice way to hedge risk and make sure that we're continuously growing the business.
Yeah, amazing. Well, for every guest that we've got on here during JPM, I ask them 3 rapid fire questions. First one I have for you is everyone's 2 favorite letters, AI.
Yeah. We're making a big commitment to it. And I do believe that we were one of the first movers in terms of really doubling down. We have an AI innovation unit within the company. It crosses the enterprise. I think where we've had the most early returns so far is what we're doing from a customer relation management standpoint, utilizing the tool to be able to get real-time insights, using the tool to really help fuel, it would be a little, jargony, but you hear a lot about next best action, leveraging omni-channel capabilities. And it takes some change management to go along, but as we're in the marketplace with these new launches, how great is it that we can get more real-time feedback on how things are doing, and we can enable this through AI technology. I think the next stage is, where's AI going to help with clinical trial recruitment? Where's AI going to help with speeding up the pace in which drugs are developed? I mean, that's the really cool next chapter.
Indeed. Second one, China.
Yeah. It's a source of innovation. I think they're proving that drug development can be done swiftly. And I think that there's some inspiration that can be taken by the rest of the world. And I think it's, if there's more innovation being developed, that's good, because it's good for patients. It's good for innovation. If there's lessons to be learned here in the United States and other places around the world, that's also good. Ultimately, capitalism is going to drive competition. Competition in terms of who can innovate faster, who can develop better therapies, is ultimately good for the patients that we treat.
Mm-hmm. And then last one, obviously something also near and dear to my heart, rare disease.
It's hugely important. I mean, there are some unique regulatory pathways. We just launched, as I mentioned, an ultra-rare disease. This is non-small cell lung cancer, but with a HER2 mutation. We received a commissioner's voucher unsolicited for our first-line indication. And we are very pleased that the FDA recognized how important having more selective treatments in a disease like non-small cell lung cancer with a HER2 mutation is. And I think that just shows that, back to my conversation about hedging against some of the bigger bets in primary, rare disease is an opportunity where I do think, we can't lose sight of the fact that we also make a real significant difference for the patients that we serve.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, we're going to be really exciting to see kind of the future here as you sort of launch these new programs here in 2026 and beyond, and would certainly love to have you on again to share the updates and your renewed view on the future.
Thank you. Happy to do so. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.